What's up, everyone? Today is Father's Day, and for those of you out there who are struggling, whether you don't have a dad, you have a bad relationship with your dad, you lost your dad, or you're about to become one, just understand that you're not alone and that we're all here together. What's up, everyone? It's Zeke here. So this is one of those off-topic videos I am going to do today because this is one of those videos I'm coming out from the bottom of my heart. And today is Father's Day, and it's a very unique and special day for me because it was 3 years ago when I was still in college, my dad had tragically and suddenly passed away. It was one of the most heartbreaking, depressing, and emotional time of my life because for one, he was my best friend and the closest person I had in my life, and for two, I was only 20 years old at the time and I was still in college and I was going through a lot already. And this was back in 2023 during my sophomore year of college. I was still at Ohio State. My dad had just relocated to Detroit for a new job and everything was going smoothly for us. It was during Christmas break that year. We went home together to Maryland. We watched the Ohio State versus Georgia game on New Year's Eve. Yeah, everything was good. And after break, he dropped me back at Ohio State and he went back to Detroit for his job. So nothing out of the ordinary. Ever since he moved to Detroit, he became a big Pistons fan. So I suggested that we go to a game together. And the Pistons were actually playing the Knicks that night on January 15th. And the night before I went there, he had told me that he was very sick and he didn't know why, but he just told me not to come visit because he feared I might get infected. He doesn't know if it's COVID or some sort of infectious disease. So I was actually debating on whether to go or not, and I was actually on the verge of not going, but I ended up ignoring his warnings and I went anyways. So when I got to Detroit, I had asked him if he was still coming to the game, and he said no. So I went and watched the game all by myself, and the Pistons ended up losing that night. So after the game, I went to check in on him at the place he was staying. The landlord, an old lady in her 70s, opened the door for me. She told me about his condition, that she urged him to see a doctor, and that her advice went in one ear and out the other. So I went upstairs to his room and I opened the door. He looked very sick, and I asked him what happened. He said he didn't know. So I put the back of my hand on his forehead and I felt the fever from him. So I told him to rest and I'd take him to the hospital the next morning. I ended up sleeping on a couch that night that the landlord arranged for me. So the next morning, his condition was no better, so I decided which ER to take him to and that he needed to use the bathroom, but he couldn't walk on his own. So I had to wrap my arms around his neck and I carried him down the stairs and I got him into my car. And at the ER, he couldn't get up out of the car, so I had to go inside and get the emergency responders to come out and get him. And once we were inside, they checked his vitals, his heartbeat, his temperature, his pulse, his awareness, and they told me that he wasn't looking good and that he needed to be transported to the nearest hospital and put in the ICU. So they called an ambulance and I followed it, and we ended up at Beaumont Hospital in Royal Oak, Michigan. So when he got admitted to the ICU, he was very hungry. So I grabbed some crackers from the break room and he needed to use the restroom, but he couldn't stand on his own. So me and the medical staff helped him. And I had no idea what was happening. I was under extreme stress. The doctor had told me that his condition was critical and that they needed to sedate him. And I needed to say my last words to him because he may never hear from me or see me again. So I looked him in the eye and I told him that I loved him. And he looked back at me and felt my face with his cold hands and said, "I'm so proud of you, son." And those were the last words I ever heard from him. He then closed his eyes and they put him on the ventilator and sedated him. I ended up spending that night at the hospital and I found a random bench in the lobby and I tried to rest, but I couldn't. I was constantly on high alert and it was around 1 a.m. when my phone rang. A doctor from the ICU had called me and he said that I needed to come down to the ICU now. So I asked him why. He told me that your dad's heart has just stopped beating. And immediately after hearing that, my heart sank. I rushed into the elevator and into the ICU, and I saw a group of emergency responders perform CPR on him with a defibrillator while he was still on the ventilator. A doctor had told me that his heart had stopped beating suddenly, and that they were doing CPR, but that there was a chance that he was already gone. So I went to his ICU room, and I could see the doctors and staff stepping out and looking at us through the windows with their hands folded in front of them and with their hats down. And that is exactly when I knew that's what they were anticipating. So I broke down in his ICU room and someone helped me to the family room outside the ICU where the other family members were waiting. I sat in a dark corner and I cried by myself. And that's where I met this girl called Sarah. She was there with her family because her brother was also in the ICU after suffering from a seizure from a drug overdose. And Sarah was this sweet Muslim girl. She wore a hijab at the time. And I was just very out of my zone at the time. So I didn't know what was going on. But her eyes were absolutely gorgeous when I looked at them. And mine were the complete opposite because I was so red from crying. So I called my mom. In fact, if you guys didn't know, my mother and father actually didn't live together because my mom was on the other side of the world. And immediately after she heard of the situation, she booked a flight to come and see us. So while I was still in the family room, a doctor, an older one probably in his 70s with gray hair, came in to speak to Sarah's family. And when he finished, I went up to him and asked him, "Doctor, I would like to know what is going on with my dad. Like, how bad is his condition?" So he looked me in the eye and told me, "I'm going to be serious. Your dad is in a very serious condition, and we are doing the best we can to take care of him, but we can't make any guarantees." So when my mother had arrived on January 19th, 2023, by the time she got to the ICU, the doctors had already completed the brain death diagnosis, which consisted of an apnea test and a CT scan. And when they brought us into a room to deliver the news, when they confirmed it, my mother broke down and I held her in my arms while the doctors looked at us with empathy. He never sat down to teach me anything about money. He just lived it by actions. And I think as we get older, a lot of us tend to overlook spending time or talking to family and loved ones. But life is so short, and we only have so much time left at our hands. And tomorrow is never guaranteed. So if you have a family member or loved one you want to call, don't wait. This is Zeke, and I hope you guys stay safe out there.